So happy to be here. And first of all, I do want to thank my elders for me being here. I want to give thanks and praise, as Zena said, to Brother James Johnson of South Carolina. I want to give honor to Brother James Andrews, President of the North Carolina AFL-CIO, for paving the way for me, and it's on their shoulders that I stand, and it's their honor that I try to uplift every day. I want to thank my comrades, like Brother Dennis, Sister Naima, Sister Shafir, Nathan Nat, Brother Saladin Muhammad, Ajamu, and Agaza, for your continuous and courageous struggle in this fight for Black liberation and social justice. And I want to thank my ride or die buddies of over 50 years, Brother Rudolph Lewis and Brother Bob Moore, my teacher. Give them a hand. I had the opportunity today to ride with Brother Rick and Brother Laughinghouse to visit the Fruit of Labor Cultural Center. I was blown away. That is magnificent. So I want to give a big shout out to all of the young brothers and sisters in here. Anybody under the age of 35, please stand up. Under the age of 35, go ahead. That's right. Woo! That's right. That's right. Thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my leaders from the A. Philip Randolph Institute, Sister Mary and Brother Melvin Mumford. Give them a round of applause. Now, to one of the baddest sisters.
Oh, that's me.
Hey, give that sister a round of applause. But one of my friends in struggle and comrades in arms, a fearless leader, a person that is not unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power. I was kidding earlier that I'm sure that at some point she either was or she's going to be a Baptist minister. Give it up for Sister Mary B. McMillan. So I'm honored to be here this evening with you, celebrating the 36-year history of the Black Workers for Justice. Go ahead, keep it straight. And the 34th anniversary of this annual Martin Luther King Jr. Support for Labor Banquet. So it is indeed appropriate that this banquet comes at a time when the struggle against racism, capitalism, and imperialism is intensifying all over the world. In 2017, it is still true that countries want independence, that nations want liberation. And in fact, brothers and sisters, the people are crying out for revolution. So now the capitalists of this country in particular, and the imperialists worldwide, are dead set on crushing the people's aspirations for freedom. They want to turn back the hands of progress, whether it is in Cuba, or North Carolina, or Raleigh in particular, they continue to demonstrate that their main mode of operation is war and warmongering and subsequent murder. Those are their favorite modes of operation. They don't always resort to dropping bombs like it's been done in Iraq, in Syria, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. They don't always resort to those kinds of acts. But with their economic and their military might and their control of the present economic and social order, they create fratricidal situations where the oppressed people oftentimes fall victim to the madness of white supremacy and xenophobia, and people get confused about who and the nature of the enemy. Right now, in the city of Baltimore, where I come from, where I live, we are averaging a murder a day. A murder a day. Most of those murders are black on black murders. We are adding a death to the murder list quicker than we are adding jobs for the chronically unemployed in Baltimore. That is the nature of capitalism. That is the nature of racism. Met this sister last night over at Larry's Southern Kitchen. I probably didn't read the sign correctly. I thought it was saying eat all. So I was just going back, but the food was good. And ran into the sister, so we had a conversation, was asking, where she was from, where she had been. She asked us where we were from, and she says, oh, I've been to a lot of places, but I have no desire to go to Baltimore because they murder people up there. And the fact is, it has, per capita speaking, it is the murder capital of the country. Unfortunately, too many of these murders are of our youth. And I know a lot of us, based on the progress of our elders and our foremothers and fathers, sometimes we look at our young people with a jaundiced eye. And I suggest to you that we need to do a better job of embracing them and teaching them. The timing of this banquet and the man to whom tribute is paid, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, causes me, like Dennis, to reflect on that speech in 1967 at Riverside Baptist Church when he was talking about the Vietnam War. And he said, there's a point when silence is betrayal. 1967, he said that time was there. We could substitute North Carolina, Baltimore, Chicago, New York City, Florida for Vietnam. So there, in fact, does come a time when silence is betrayal. And we need to speak out, because that statement is still true. Silence is betrayal. But some of us, some of you in the Black Worker for Justice, its leaders and its allies in the Black Liberation Movement, its allies in the trade union movement, the broader workers movement, the youth movement, the environmental movement, and the women's movement are raising your voices. You're already raising your voices. And those voices, folks, are getting louder in community after community after community all over this land. The Moral Monday movement that has its origin in this town has grown outside the boundaries of Raleigh, reaching into the countryside, and is being emulated in cities and towns all over this country. Thank you, Reverend Barber. Thank you, all the warriors that participate in the Moral Monday movement. I know that here in North Carolina, you are organizing the struggle on the front lines in the South. Sister Murray B. is a solid champion for organizing in the South. I've been in her presence on numerous occasions when she calls out and said the labor movement seems to have forgotten about the South. We know that they forgot about it in 1934. The memories need to be jogged. But you're building that fight here in North Carolina. That the theme of this year's Banquet is really a clarion call to continue the fight against HBT2. And what the governor has done is not enough. Doesn't go far enough. The fight here, the cutting edge of the fight against voter suppression is taking place in North Carolina. Right. That fight needs to continue. Islamophobia, anti-immigrant policies, and the rise of white supremacist groups like the KKK have to be squashed every time it raises its ugly head. So this call of the Black Workers for Justice, this call for building these worker assemblies, this call for building these regional united front organizations is testimony that there is something wrong in America. There's something morally wrong in America. Now the warriors in this room know that the struggle to victory is long, and that there ebbs and flows in this struggle, in this liberation struggle, in this freedom struggle. There are victories. But yesterday's victories and defeats, neither of those are final. The call to greater education that's represented by the Black Workers for Justice and its allied organizations, the call to build study groups and united front and the workers' assemblies reminds me of stages in my journey. I'm reminded as a young boy of 17, having left segregated Virginia, piece together pennies to go to Baltimore and attend Morgan State University, hooking up with radical people like Baltimore, Bob Moore in Baltimore, with Brother Rudolph Lewis, co-founding the Society of African American Students, because we saw back in 1968 that something was wrong in the state of Maryland. Under the guise of integration, they were saying, oh, well, what we're going to do is take these historically black institutions and place them under the umbrella of the University of Maryland system. We fought that battle in 1968. Morgan refused to succumb to that, filed a court case. The case was won in the courts last year, 2016, when the state of Maryland said that it had in fact discriminated against the HBCUs in Maryland. So those fights continue. The mantra that we organized under back then, that SNCC, and there are probably some SNCC activists in the room, is that what we do, I see you, Teresa, is that what we do is that we take every fight in the community to the workplace. And we take every fight in the workplace to the community. What was then and what is now increasingly clear is the centrality of black workers to this movement for social and economic justice in the United States of America. To my parents' disappointment, I actually dropped out of Morgan because I believe in the role of workers in building progress in this country. I believe that the majority of people in this country are working people, and that social and economic policy should emanate from the perspective of workers. So I dropped out of college to go to the point of production, because that's how the bosses make their profit. So I went to work in the steel mills. And at that time, in 1968, unfortunately, much of the fight was against the racism in the union as much as it was against racism and racist practices of Bethlehem Steel. At one point, we actually had 6 study groups going on. Bethlehem Steel used to employ about 40,000 people at one point. So the thing was, revolution is a conscious act. And we have to know what the fight is about, who the enemy is, and have some idea of what a better world can look like. Big challenge for me over the years has been, how do you carry out anti-capitalist, anti-racist work in the context of trade unions? It continues to be a challenge for me, and I suggest for other folks in the union movement today. We cannot bring about a new world, the necessary requisites for social and economic justice in this country, if it is just about wages, hours, and working conditions. Because workers know about this thing called inflation and what it does to wages. They know, as the song said, that jobs will, what is it?
Run away.
Profits, they will run away and the profits will rise. Workers know that. So we have to talk with people and said that this fight is about a better world. So it was out of these study groups at Bethlehem Steel, at General Motors, that we linked up with other such groups around the country and actually formed the League of Revolutionary Black Workers as a united front organization. And that's what the Black Workers for Justice is talking about, building a united front of workers. It's not saying that everybody has to be of the same ideological or political persuasion, but we unite around what the problem is. Racism is a problem in this country, and until we address it head on, have discussions about it, we can't overcome it. For decades, I've been working with a rehab program in Baltimore, drug rehab program. And one of the things that we teach folks is that recovery begins with an acknowledgement that you have a problem. There's still too many people in this country that don't want to admit what the crux of this racist problem is in this country. So we have to be vigilant. We have to be persistent in talking about this. It's not to diminish the white comrades in the room, our allies, but it is saying that we can't move forward. We can't move forward until we say, first of all, that slavery was wrong. Amen. The enslavement of Africans in America was wrong. In 2017, this country is built on the near annihilation of Native Americans and the enslavement of Africans. That's right. And the generations old philosophy of white supremacy. Now, central to this taught and lived philosophy of white supremacy is that black people were less than human. See, now say it with me, because figure 1619 to 1865. You're talking about 246 years where the law of the land, the mindset was that if you were black, you were less than human. You're talking about nearly 8 to 10 generations of people that grew up believing that. And I'm certainly not standing up here saying that it is something in white blood that caused them to believe that. But the teachings and the lived experiences caused that notion of white supremacy to take on the character of a genotype. It didn't just impact white folks, because black folks had to live it, had to live in the image. So people say, I don't know what's wrong with these young people today. There's a long history of the dehumanizing of black people in this country that I submit to you has had an impact on both black people and white people. So we have a monumental task in front of us, and we can't wish it away. We have to continue this fight until we overcome the 398 years of enslavement and Jim Crow in the United States of America. And as we continue this fight, we understand we would like for it to go away tomorrow. 398 years is a long time, but in the course of history, it's a relatively short time. And because of our persistence, sisters and brothers, we have made progress in America. When people tell me, oh, well, nothing's changed, I said, well, it's not 1619. A small minority of the population caused there to be a 13th Amendment, a 14th Amendment, a 15th Amendment, a 24th Amendment, a 26th Amendment. That speaks to the tenacity. That speaks to this urge for freedom and justice on the part of African Americans in this country. And it's not just about survival. It's a question of freedom, solidarity. So some people will say, Fred, why are you always talking about slavery? That happened so long ago. My response is, you may think that we are done with slavery, but slavery ain't done with us. Some people say that slaves were taken from Africa. Another way of looking at that is that people were taken from Africa and made into slaves.
That's right.
We have to teach.
That's right.
Bob Marley says in Buffalo Soldier, in the heart of America, stolen from Africa, brought to America, fighting on arrival, fighting for survival. That's our story. In the midst of all of that, in the midst of attempts to wipe us out as a people, we didn't disappear. We formed into a nation. We formed into a nation, an oppressed nation, but a nation nonetheless. The system of racism and capitalism that we live under is an inhumane way of life. Regardless of what some of our well-intended sisters and brothers say, I do not take responsibility for the oppression, my oppression for the state of black people, because black people are unfree, undeveloped, and they have not been in control. Mothers cannot control the babies. They still can. So we have to call it what it is. It's a system that continues to perpetuate this misery in our communities. Oppression breeds resistance. Oppression breeds resistance. And we have been resisting since day one in this country.
That's right.
And again, history is full of examples of resistance, rebellions against oppression. So the main dynamic of the African American experience is not just about survival, because we know that they will kick us down, knock us down, but what do we say? Still we rise. It's about freedom. We fight to build a world where we are free from imprisonment, where we are free from slavery, where we're free from oppression and released from the oppressor-imposed limits on our behavior and actions. Folks, there are many battle fronts in this black liberation struggle. We can rattle them off. You know, you got police repression. You got the increasing white on black murders. You got the water crisis. We got the housing crisis. We got crisis in education. We have crisis dealing with the disparities in healthcare and the disparities in life expectancy. One of the things that I say sometimes to draw attention is, what about my 7 years? And people say, well, what are you talking about, Fred? I say the 7 years that actuarially I am projected to die 7 years earlier than the white male born on the same day as me. Insurance companies know that, pension plans know that, everybody knows that. We have to figure out how to create a more equitable situation. So it's up to us, and I appreciate all of you who came out on this Saturday evening. I'm sure that there are other things that you could have done, but you are part of building this resistance, that is and will be necessary for building a revolution in this country. Now, a lot of folks say, well, Fred, you're going too far with this question. Some people will say, you talk about capitalism. Capitalism has been around forever, implying that it will always be here. I don't believe that. I believe that this system is rotten to the core, and it needs to be replaced. I'm not standing up here saying that I have the answer, or even the Black Workers for Justice has the answer. But I know that we are not progressing, that there's too much suffering going on in America, there's too much suffering going on in the world for the system of capitalism and imperialism to continue. And our resolve is that we will fight from one generation to the next. In closing, I'm reminded of Sister Zora Neale Hurston in 1937, when she said, if you are silent about your pain, they will kill you and say that you enjoyed it. Now, 20 years before Zora Neale Hurston uttered those words, after the Red Summer in America, folks, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Red Summer, 1919. Mass attacks on black people, mass murders of black people, and it was called the Red Summer. Black people were dying. So this is about 20 years before Zora Neale Hurston. A brother by the name of Clyde McKay, a poet, commenting on the pain that had been inflicted upon, experienced by, and overcome by African Americans, recognizing that it was great and ongoing. Clyde McKay acknowledged that pain, saw hundreds of people being slaughtered with no legal redress. MLK said, if we must die, let it not be like hogs, hunted and penned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock of our accursed life. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then, even the monsters that we defy shall be constrained to honor us, though dead. He said, O kinsmen, we must meet the common foe. Though far outnumbered, let us show us brave. And for their 1,000 blows, deal one death blow. Though before us lies the open grave, like men and women, we will face the murderous path, press against the wall, but fight it back. Sisters and brothers, we would never give up this fight for freedom. We will never give up the fight to right the wrongs of slavery in this United States. We will continue to fight persistent racism and racist manifestations, and we will never forget. And when we are gone, the fight will continue from one generation to the next. Thank you.